My wife filed for divorce, and my 12-year-old daughter stands up in the mediation room and asks the family counselor, "May I share something that my dad doesn't know about yet?" The counselor nodded slowly, looking back and forth between my soon-to-be ex-wife and me. When Claire pulled out her old iPad and pressed play, the entire room went quiet. I'm Robert Harrison, 52 years old, and I spent the last 25 years designing bridges across British Columbia. I never thought I'd need to build a bridge back to my own life. But that's exactly where I found myself last summer, in a small office with no windows in downtown Vancouver, watching my world rebuild itself in ways I never expected. Michelle and I have been married for 15 years. We met at a charity event in Toronto back when I was a young engineer, and she was moving up in her career in marketing. She was amazing, confident, the kind of person who could control a room without raising her voice. I fell in love hard and fast. We married within a year, moved to Vancouver for my job, and 5 years later, Claire was born. For the first 10 years, everything seemed great. I worked on building projects. Michelle built her career at a downtown marketing company, and Claire grew from a curious toddler into a thoughtful, observant child. But around 3 years ago, things started changing. The Iron Workers Memorial Bridge project took over my life. 12-hour days became 14-hour days. Weekend work became normal. I was designing something that would last for many lifetimes, but I was missing the present. Michelle's complaints started slowly. "You're never home for dinner anymore." Then they got worse. "Claire had her school concert tonight. You promised you'd be there." I tried to explain that the project timeline was important, that the money problems meant I needed to be at the site all the time, that this was temporary. She'd look at me with those cold green eyes and say, "It's always temporary with you, Robert, except it never ends." I thought she understood. I thought she knew I was doing this for us, for our future. The project would help me become senior engineer, maybe even a partner. We could buy that lake house in the Okanagan she'd always wanted. Claire's college fund would be safe. I didn't realize Michelle had stopped waiting for our future. She'd started building her own present. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday in March, brought to my office trailer by someone who looked sorry for me. I sat there in my hard hat and safety vest, reading words like "can't get along," ignoring marriage duties, and leaving partner alone emotionally. My hands shook as I reached the part about custody plans. Michelle was asking for main custody of Claire, saying I was gone all the time and cared more about work than family. That night, I drove home to our house in Kitsilano, the one with the view of English Bay that we'd saved money for 12 years ago. Michelle was in the bedroom packing. Claire was in her room, door closed, music playing softly. I knocked. "Come in, Dad." She was sitting on her bed, her old iPad in her lap, the one we'd given her 3 years ago that she'd mostly stopped using after getting her phone. She looked up at me with those serious hazel eyes, and I saw something there I hadn't noticed before. Worry and something else. Knowledge. "Your mom told you?" I asked, sitting on the edge of her bed. "She told me you two were separating," she said. "She said you work too much and don't care about us anymore." The words hit like someone had punched me. "Claire, sweetheart, that's not true. I care about you and your mom more than anything. The work project. It's been crazy, but it's almost finished." I thought she understood. "Dad," Claire interrupted, her voice quiet. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How do you know when someone's lying to you?" The question surprised me. "Well, sometimes people won't look you in the eye, or their story doesn't make sense, or you just get a feeling that something's wrong." "Why do you ask?" She looked down at her iPad, then back at me, just wondering. She paused. "Dad, do you think the truth always matters, even if it hurts?" I studied her face, trying to understand where this was coming from. "Yes," I said carefully. "I think the truth matters, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." She nodded slowly, then hugged me tightly. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart." The mediation was scheduled for mid-May, giving us 2 months to prepare. Michelle hired Catherine Brennan, a lawyer known for helping wives in big divorces. I found myself sitting across from James Chun, a family law attorney who was recommended by someone I worked with. "She's saying you ignored her feelings," James explained during our first meeting. "She's making you look like you were gone all the time, only care about work, and didn't care about your family. She's going to use your work hours against you." "But I was providing for them," I said. "The extra pay, the benefits, the safety." "I understand," James said gently. "But family court isn't about logic. It's about how things look. We need to show you're a good father, that you being gone was short-term and because of work, not because you didn't care. I spent the next weeks writing down everything. Photos of Claire and me at soccer games I'd gone to, emails where I'd changed my schedule for school events, text messages showing I'd help with homework from far away. It felt strange, turning being a father into proof packets. Michelle, meanwhile, was building her own story. Through the legal process, I learned she'd been writing things down too. Photos of empty dinner chairs, screenshot of my working late texts, a journal where she'd written down every missed birthday, every canceled date night, every promise I'd broken. Some of it was true, some of it was exaggerated. But reading it, I saw how she'd experienced our marriage, and it destroyed me. Had I really been that absent? Had I really cared more about steel and concrete than the people I loved? Claire went back and forth between us during this time. Michelle had moved into a condo downtown, and we'd agreed on a temporary schedule while the divorce went forward. Every time Claire came back from her mother's place, she seemed quieter, more pulled back. I tried to talk to her about it, but she'd just say she was fine. She was dealing with it. I noticed she started carrying that old iPad everywhere again. When I asked about it, she said she was using it to write her feelings, that her school counselor had suggested it as a way to handle her feelings about the divorce. I was relieved she had an outlet. I had no idea what she was actually doing. The mediation session was scheduled for a Thursday morning in a downtown office building, one of those business spaces with strange art and uncomfortable modern furniture. The family counselor, Dr. Patricia Walsh, was a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a serious manner. She explained that while this wasn't a courtroom, her advice would be very important to the judge if we couldn't agree on things. Michelle arrived with Catherine, both dressed in sharp business clothes. Michelle looked polished, put together, every inch a successful marketing executive. I was in my best suit, feeling awkward and out of place. James sat beside me, his briefcase full of our carefully written proof of my fatherhood. Claire arrived separately, as Dr. Walsh had asked. She wanted to speak with Claire privately first to get her view without parents around. When Claire walked in, she was wearing her school uniform, her backpack on her shoulders, her iPad tucked under her arm. Dr. Walsh led us through the normal process. Each side would show their position. Then we'd talk about custody plans, splitting property, and support payments. Michelle went first. She was well-spoken, convincing, emotional at exactly the right moments. She talked about how she'd been the main parent for years, how she'd gone to every school event, every doctor's appointment, every parent-teacher conference, how she tried to hold our family together while I disappeared into my work. "I'm not saying Robert is a bad person," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "but he's absent. He's been absent for years. Claire needs stability, steadiness, a parent who's actually there. I can give that. I don't think he can." Catherine showed their evidence, photos, texts, that terrible journal. It looked bad. It looked like exactly what Michelle said, a father who'd stopped caring about his family. Then it was our turn. James showed our different story. "Yes, I've been working lots of hours, but it was because of a project, it was temporary, and it was done to give us money security. I'd stayed involved with Claire when I was home. I'd never missed a birthday or Christmas. I'd coached her soccer team for 3 years before the bridge project got really busy. Mr. Harrison is a loving father," James said. "His work schedule has been hard, but that's not the same as ignoring his family. He's an engineer working on important buildings. The hours were needed, but he's always put his daughter first when he's home." It felt empty even as I heard it. Michelle's version sounded more real, more emotional. Mine sounded like excuses. Dr. Walsh listened to both sides, taking notes, her face neutral. Then she turned to Claire, who'd been sitting quietly in a chair by the window. "Claire," Dr. Walsh said gently, "you've heard what both your parents have said. Do you have anything you'd like to share? Remember, this is a safe space. You won't get in trouble for being honest." Claire looked at her mother, then at me, then down at her iPad. She took a deep breath. "May I share something that my dad doesn't know about yet?" she asked, her voice steady but quiet. Dr. Walsh's eyebrows raised slightly. "Of course, Claire. What would you like to share?" Michelle got tense. I saw it in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the armrest of her chair. Catherine leaned forward slightly. Claire stood up, walked to the center of the room, and set her iPad on Dr. Walsh's desk. "I have recordings," she said, "from the past 3 months. I think they're important." My heart was pounding. Recordings of what? What kind of recordings, sweetheart? "Conversations," Claire said. "At home, when Mom thought I couldn't hear." She looked at Michelle. I'm sorry, Mom, but I can't let you lie about Dad. Michelle's face went pale. Claire, what are you talking about? Claire pressed play on the first recording. The sound quality was good. The voice is clear. I heard Michelle's voice first, then a man's voice I didn't know. They were laughing. Then the conversation became romantic, talking about plans to meet, talking about how Michelle would tell me she was at yoga or working late. The man's voice said, "Does he still not know?" Michelle's voice answered, "Robert? God, no. He's so buried in that bridge project. He barely notices I exist. It makes this easier, honestly." The room was completely silent except for the recording. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Michelle was staring at Claire, her face showing shock and anger. Catherine was quickly taking notes. James looked at me, then quickly back at the iPad. Claire let that recording finish, then played another. This one was from our kitchen based on the background sounds. Michelle was on the phone. "Kyle, you need to be patient," she was saying. "Once the divorce is final, we can be open about us. But right now, I need to look like the victim, the abandoned wife. It's better for the custody case. No, he has no idea. He's completely clueless." My hands were shaking. "Kyle, the personal trainer at the gym Michelle had been going 4 times a week. The gym membership I've been paying for." Claire stopped that recording and looked at Dr. Walsh. "There are 14 more," she said quietly. "Some are phone calls. Some are conversations at home. Some are," she glanced at me apologetically, "from when he came over when Dad was working late." Dr. Walsh had put down her pen. "Claire, how did you make these recordings?" "My iPad," Claire said. "I noticed Mom started acting differently about 6 months ago. She was happier, but in a weird way, and she was on her phone all the time, hiding it when I walked in. Then she started saying Dad working too much more and more. She'd say things to me like, 'Your father doesn't care about us,' or 'We'd be better off without him.' She looked at me, and I saw tears in her eyes. But I knew that wasn't true, Dad. You were working hard, but you still video called me every night when you worked late. You still helped me with my science project, even if it was at midnight. You were trying. So I started recording," Claire continued. "I'd leave my iPad in the kitchen with the voice recording app running. Mom didn't know this iPad could still record audio. She thought it was broken, but I'd fixed it by watching YouTube videos." She turned back to Dr. Walsh. "I recorded because I was scared. Scared that Mom would make everyone believe Dad was bad. And he's not bad. He's just been really, really busy." Michelle finally spoke. "Claire, you had no right." "No!" Claire interrupted, her voice stronger now. "You had no right to lie. You had no right to blame Dad for everything when you were the one cheating. You had no right to try to take me away from him when he didn't do anything wrong." Tears were running down her face now, but she kept going. "I heard you talking to Catherine last week, Mom. You said, 'By the time we're done, Rod will be lucky to get supervised visits.' You were trying to take away my dad. For what? So you could be with Kyle?" Dr. Walsh held up her hand. "Everyone, let's take a moment." She looked at Catherine and Michelle. "I need to hear these recordings. All of them. Ms. Brennan, does your client want to say these recordings aren't real?" Catherine and Michelle looked at each other. Michelle's face had gone from pale to red. We need to talk," Catherine said. "Take your time," Dr. Walsh said. She turned to Claire. "Sweetheart, I know this must have been really difficult for you, carrying this information, not knowing what to do with it. You're very brave." Claire wiped her eyes. "I just wanted the truth to matter," she whispered. Dr. Walsh asked for a break. Michelle and Catherine went into the hallway. I could hear loud voices through the door. James turned to me. "Did you know?" he asked. I shook my head, unable to speak. I felt like I was underwater, everything muffled and strange. Claire came over and hugged me. "I'm sorry, Dad. I know this hurts, but I couldn't let her take you away from me." I held my daughter, this brave, smart, heartbroken 12-year-old who'd carried this weight alone for months. "You have nothing to say sorry for." I managed to say, "Nothing at all." We spent the next 2 hours going through Claire's recordings. Dr. Walsh listened to each one, making notes. Some were bad in obvious ways, romantic conversations, planning secret meetings. Others were quieter, but just as revealing. Michelle practicing what to say in mediation, talking with Catherine about how to make me look neglectful. One recording really stood out. It was from about a month ago. Michelle on the phone with someone, probably Kyle. "The timing is perfect," she was saying. Robert's project is in its final part, so he's working crazy hours. When I file for divorce, it'll look like he abandoned us during the most important time. The judge will see a pattern of neglect, and with Claire's statement about how absent he's been, what if Claire doesn't back you up? Kyle's voice asked. She's 12. Michelle said like it didn't matter. She'll say what I tell her to say. Kids always side with the parent who's actually around. Hearing Michelle easily assumed she could control our daughter. I felt something change inside me. This wasn't just about cheating. This was about a planned attack to destroy me and use our child as a weapon. When the break ended, Michelle and Catherine came back. Michelle looked defeated. Catherine looked professional, but serious. My client wants to make a statement, Catherine said. Michelle took a breath. I made mistakes, obviously. But Robert, you have to understand, I felt abandoned for years. The affair was wrong. I know that, but you pushed me to it. You were never there. That's not an explanation, I said quietly, and it's definitely not an excuse. Dr. Walsh stopped us. Michelle, I'm going to be direct with you. These recordings are really bad. They show not only cheating in your marriage, which isn't always important for custody, but also proof of lying about the divorce, controlling your daughter, and false accusations against Robert. That is important for custody. She paused, letting that sink in. Given what I've heard, I'm saying Robert should get main physical custody of Claire, with you having supervised visits until you complete counseling and show you can work together as parents without lying or controlling. Michelle's face crumbled. You can't. She's my daughter. And you were willing to use her as a weapon against her father, Dr. Walsh said, not mean but firmly. Claire needs stability and honesty. Right now, Robert is better able to give that. The legal problems took weeks to settle. Catherine stopped working on Michelle's case, saying she was concerned about possibly false accusations. Michelle had to hire new lawyers. The custody plan became official. I got main custody. Michelle got 1 supervised visit per week and 1 video call per week, with a review after 6 months of counseling. But there were other results, too, ones I hadn't expected. 2 weeks after the mediation, I got a call from Tom, an old friend who told me about James. Hey, weird question, he said. Do you know a Kyle Patterson? Michelle's personal trainer. I said bitterly. Why? His wife just filed for divorce. Apparently, someone sent her recordings of her husband talking about his affair. She's taking everything from him. I looked over at Claire, who was doing homework at the kitchen table. She caught my eye and gave a small shrug. Good, I said. Kyle lost more than his marriage. His gym fired him for doing wrong things, having affairs with clients. Last I heard, he'd moved to Alberta, trying to start over. Michelle's career got hurt, too. Someone, I never asked who, but I had my guesses, told her company's HR department about the story. While they couldn't fire her for personal problems, her reputation was damaged. She didn't get a promotion. She moved to a smaller condo in Surrey. The life she'd been building with Kyle disappeared. I tried not to feel happy about any of it. Mostly, I just felt sad. Sad for what we'd lost. Sad for the years wasted. Sad for what this had done to Claire. Claire, and I spent that summer rebuilding our relationship. I took 3 months off work, something I'd never done before. We drove up to Whistler, went hiking in the Rockies, spent weekends at English Bay watching the sunset. We talked, really talked, about everything. About the divorce, about her feelings, about what she'd gone through recording those conversations. I felt like a spy, she told me one evening as we walked along the seawall. I felt guilty, like I was betraying Mom. But I also felt like if I didn't do something, you'd lose me, and I couldn't let that happen. You shouldn't have had to carry that, I said. That wasn't your weight to bear. But someone had to tell the truth, she said. And the adults were also busy fighting and lying. I didn't think anyone else would. In September, I went back to work, but differently. I turned down the partnership track. I took a job with regular hours, no weekend work, no extra overtime. Yes, it meant less money. Yes, it meant slower career growth. But it meant being there when Claire got home from school. It meant cooking dinner together. It meant I could actually keep promises. Michelle and I eventually developed a working co-parenting relationship. It took time, therapy, and a lot of difficult conversations. She completed her counseling, took responsibility for her actions, and slowly earned back alone time with Claire. I don't think Claire will ever fully trust her again, but they're rebuilding something. It's not what it was, but it's real. A year later, Claire and I were sitting in Stanley Park feeding peanuts to the squirrels. She was 13 now, taller, more confident. The weight she'd carried had lifted. "Dad," she said, "do you regret working so hard on that bridge project?" I thought about it carefully. I regret the time I missed with you. I regret not seeing what was happening in my marriage, but I don't regret the work itself. That bridge will help thousands of people for decades. That matters, too. But you matter more. We matter more, she said. You matter more, I said, always. And I'm sorry it took almost losing you to really understand that. She leaned against my shoulder. You didn't lose me, Dad. You never could have. I just had to make sure everyone else knew that, too. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't then. Claire didn't just save me from losing custody. She saved me from losing myself in work, from missing her childhood, from giving up what mattered for what seemed urgent. She forced me to see that career success means nothing if you have no one to share it with. And she taught me that children see everything. They notice the empty chairs at dinner, the missed performances, the broken promises. But they also notice the efforts, the late-night video calls, the attempts to be there even when you're physically away. They're keeping score, and they understand more than we think they do. The truth, I learned, doesn't always come through logical arguments or carefully written evidence. Sometimes it comes through the clear eyes of a child who simply refuses to accept lies, even when those lies will be easier for everyone. Michelle made choices that destroyed our marriage. But I made choices, too. Choices to put work over being there. To assume Michelle would always be there waiting. To take my family for granted. Neither of us were without blame. The difference is Claire saw through both of our mistakes and chose honesty over comfort. If you're reading this and you're working 60-hour weeks, telling yourself it's for your family's future, I want you to hear this. Your family needs you now, in the present. They need your time more than your money, your presence more than your promotions. Don't wait until a crisis forces you to realize what matters. And if you're going through a divorce, especially a bad one, remember that your children are watching everything. They're forming opinions, gathering proof in their own way, deciding who to trust. Be the parent they can trust with truth, even when truth is painful. Claire is 16 now. She's doing great. Honor roll student, captain of her soccer team, already talking about engineering programs at UBC. She wants to design bridges like her dad, but better ones, she says. Ones that connect people, not just places. Last week, she asked to see the recordings she'd made all those years ago. I kept them backed up and stored away, just in case. We listened to a few together. I sound so young, she said. You were young, I replied. Too young to have to do what you did. Maybe, she said, but I'd do it again. You deserve the truth. I deserve to keep my dad. She paused the recording and looked at me. Do you think Mom would have won if I hadn't recorded everything? I thought about the question honestly. I don't know. Maybe. The system isn't perfect, and she was very convincing. That's scary, Claire said. It is, I agreed, but it's also why truth matters so much. Why evidence matters. Why we have to be willing to speak up, even when it's hard. Even when it means hurting people you love. She added quietly. Even then, I said, because real love isn't about protecting people from consequences. It's about caring enough to be honest, even when honesty costs you something. Claire closed the iPad. I'm glad it's over. I'm glad we made it through. Me, too, sweetheart. Me, too. We're building a good life now, Claire and I. It's different from what I imagined 15 years ago when I stood at an altar promising forever. But it's real. It's present. It's built on truth rather than assumptions. And sometimes when I drive across the Iron Workers Memorial Bridge, the project that took over those years of my life, I think about what it cost me. A marriage, certainly. Years of my daughter's childhood. Partly, my certainty about what mattered, completely. But it also gave me something unexpected. It gave me a daughter brave enough to demand truth when adults were choosing comfortable lies. It gave me a second chance to be the father I should have been all along. It gave me perspective on what actually holds weight when everything else falls apart. Bridges are designed to carry weight, to handle stress, to connect two sides over impossible spaces. I spent years building one from steel and concrete, but the most important bridge I ever built was the one back to my daughter. Built not from engineering plans, but from honesty, being present, and the courage of a 12-year-old girl who refused to let lies define our story. That bridge will last longer than any structure I ever designed. And unlike the bridge across the inlet, it's one I cross every single day, grateful for the foundation that almost broke, but held when it mattered.